I was listening to Classic FM the other day, and the announcer mentioned that it was the International Day of Women and that they were going to play 96 solid hours of music composed solely by women. And I thought, what an incredible yawn that's going to be. She made the usual obligatory leftist declarations about how women are underrepresented in music and how we're going to redress that situation, which prevails in every other form of human endeavour as well. But so she came out with the usual left platitudes about these things. And when the 96 hours are through, women will just start dominating the world music scene. So unless you're living under a rock or something, you're hearing this sort of stuff 25 times every day. And it just serves to reinforce the fact that leftists live in this bubble, this echo chamber, where they talk to an audience that they expect to believe this stuff. And that validates it because of their listeners and their friends and the people they know who just nod in agreement. It's a bit like Scientology radio or Mormon radio, where you can sort of expect everybody to just like nod in agreement with what you're saying, regardless of how objectively true anything might be, because the audience is on your side. In a similar vein, I remember an interview with the woman who played Lieutenant Uhura in the original Star Trek series, and she was going on at length about how, as a black woman playing a major role in a TV series, that this all represented some great sort of social revolution. There had never been black major characters in American TV series. Well, I actually grew up as an Australian. I grew up watching a black TV series called Amos and Andy back in the 50s, and that's simply not true. There were no sort of major sort of black characters on TV, but it was illustrative of how totally self-possessed these people are. They regard themselves as being at the centre of the universe. It was all damning with faint praise. Anyway, she was the communications officer on the deck of the Starship Enterprise, which, if there was a real Starship Enterprise, that would be a fairly minor job, I imagine. But the point she's making is that on the set of a TV series, to be one of a handful of major characters who, by every measure, would be a pretty minor player in the scheme of things. And it reminds me of the high-profile women in politics who wind up as foreign ministers, for example, in the United States. Hillary Clinton, who was always just a token appointee right from the get-go. She was designated as the first woman president of the United States in waiting. She was the woman who was designated to play that token role, and she was the Secretary of State, which is a bit of a cushy job, really. In Australia, it was even more pointed that the Liberals in Australia, who are supposed to be the mainstay Conservative Party, decided to designate a woman to be their candidate as the first Liberal woman Prime Minister in Australia. And she was given the role of Shadow Treasurer, which is normally the next step to becoming leader of the party and then the Prime Minister. This is a rather weighty role and a very high office, and she was just a complete dud. Right from her first press conference, it was clear that she just wasn't up to the job. So then she was booted into the foreign affairs role, which, as I just said, is a fairly sort of cushy sort of environment, and she was considered to have been a hugely successful foreign minister. But getting back to Lieutenant Uhura in the Star Trek series, this woman, she's speaking with such conviction about how her role in that TV series worked a social revolution. This is what really led to the liberation of black people. And I'm thinking, this woman is in such a bubble of self-importance. It's like she thinks she's at the centre of the universe, completely out of touch with reality. This woman seemed to really believe that she had single-handedly worked some great transformation in American society. Now, this would all strike a normal person as insufferable conceit and arrogance, but it's also the mentality of a little child who does whatever it wants to do without parental supervision. The infantile society, that's what I label the modern Western world. In celebrating these International Women's Days, feminists make a big thing of the advancement of women through their activities and through the keeping of International Women's Day and all the rest of it. But women are nowhere near to being equal to men after decades of political activism. It's all relative, coming off a very low base of participation in important jobs in society and so on. And even that very modest kind of increase in the representation and empowerment of women, even that is almost solely due to affirmative action practiced in a male-dominated society by compliant men who go along with this garbage. And women continue to be nowhere near equal with men in running the world. And here's a final comment about sexism as we celebrate the International Day of Women. Let's look at sexist statements. The word sexism is a word which I take to have absolutely no substance. You can't make an ideology out of your gender. I would have said that decades ago, and to continue the thought, if you do, you'll eventually get around to saying that we could, choose our gender. That's not something we're born with. Well, how about that? But anyway, that's a side issue. You cannot make an ideology out of the way you were born. You don't learn that in the classroom. Men drive jackhammers. Women don't. Or so few women do that it doesn't register on the radar screen. This is an entirely sexist statement. As in, I am saying that all men do this and all women don't, or no women do. But it is a completely uncontroversial statement which has this warped ideological slant imposed on it by crusaders against sexism. It's like saying dogs have 4 legs, and somebody will retort, just what do you mean by that? What are you trying to say? Sexist statements are entirely without substance as politically or ideologically charged observations. They are simply statements of the obvious. Men drive 18-wheel lorries, women don't. The number of women who do is so small as to be statistically of no significance. The word sexism is a meaningless expression and should be treated as such. That's all for now.